Good afternoon. I'm your host, Callie.
And I'm Alex.
And you're listening to 88.3 FM WQRI, Roger Williams University Student Radio in Bristol, Rhode Island. And this is Hope Pod Live with your weekly news.
Hope Pod Live is Communities of Hope Civic Media's live radio show. We cover and share news about social justice issues on campus and in Rhode Island. Last week on Hope Pod Live, we interviewed RW Dr. John King about Hollow Weekend and being good Bristol neighbors in our community. This weekend, we'll have an interview as part of our Solutions Journalism Network segment with Emily Cotter and Mario Monteiro of an organization called The Garden Time, which brings gardens to prisons to make the rehabilitation system better for the inmates. We'll also have a new episode from our immigration team, along with a special feature about the Barbershop Club's fashion show last week.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. We are Alexa and Michaela, and here's a look at some of today's top local stories. From Providence food drives to an avalanche and grenade disarming, let's dive into what's making news across Rhode Island.
Providence food drives this week. The city of East Providence is teaming with local nonprofits for a community-wide food drive aimed at helping families in need ahead of the holidays this season. Several collection sites across the city are now accepting donations. The EBCAP pantry, located inside the Dennis Roy building at 100 Bullocks Point Ave, is taking non-perishable food items Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 12:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Good Neighbors at 55 Turner Ave welcomes donations weekly from 9 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. and is especially seeking cereal, protein meals, fruit, sauces, spices, pastas, sides, rices, snacks, desserts, and more. Contributions to the Hope and Faith Drive can be dropped off at East Providence City Hall on Taunton Ave from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Wednesday and 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Thursday through Friday. The St. Francis Church Food Pantry at 81 North Carpenter Street is collecting items from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. weekdays with special requests for holiday goods like stuffing mix, gravy, pie, fillings, and cranberry sauce. Finally, the Townie Pride Pantry, located at 1998 Pawtucket Ave, is accepting donations Monday through Friday.
Rhode Island Bomb Squad called to North Providence after grenade found inside home. The North Providence Fire Department said the Rhode Island Bomb Squad was called to assist after a grenade was found inside a North Providence home on Monday. According to the department, a woman was cleaning out her house on Urban Avenue when she discovered a hand grenade. The police and fire departments responded to the home and contacted the Rhode Island Bomb Squad for assistance. Officials said the bomb squad determined no explosives were present in the grenade and disposed of the device. This from ABC6.
In a sports update, this weekend, champions will be crowned in both girls soccer and volleyball, following a week of intense semifinal matchups that determine which teams will compete for the title. In Division I girls soccer, North Kingstown secured a spot in the championship game with a 3-1 victory over Lincoln. The Skippers are set to face LaSalle on Saturday at 11 a.m. at Rhode Island College. Meanwhile, in Division I girls volleyball, East Providence earned a place in the title match by defeating LaSalle 3-1. The Townies will take on North Kingstown in the final, also scheduled for Saturday at 11 a.m. at Rhode Island College. Rhode Island Attorney General Peter Naroja said he is encouraged by progress on a deal aimed at keeping Roger Williams Medical Center and Our Lady of Fatima Hospital open and operating in the state. Both hospitals, currently owned by the for-profit company Prospect Medical Holdings, have been under financial strain, raising concerns about the impact on healthcare access for local communities. A proposed purchase by the nonprofit group the Centurion Foundation is moving forward following approval for the federal bankruptcy court in Texas through several state requirement remains before the sale can be finalized. Nerona stressed that while the court's decision is a positive step, the state's oversight will continue. We're hopeful, but our responsibility is to ensure these hospitals remain fully operational and access to patients, Nerona said. He noted that the hospitals provide care to a significant number of uninsured and underinsured residents, and their closure would have serious consequences for the Rhode Island's healthcare system. The deal includes financial commitments and operational safeguards that must be met by the buyer to satisfy state regulations. Nerona added that his office will closely monitor compliance and has the authority to halt the transaction if any conditions are not fully addressed. Community leaders and hospital staff have welcomed the potential sale emphasizing the importance of maintaining energy and routine medical services for Providence and surrounding areas. The Sanctuarian Foundation has said it plans to invest in both facilities to stabilize operations and improve patient care. No timeline has been officially set for the completion of the purchase, but officials are working to finalize details in coming months while continuing to provide care without disruption.
And that's a wrap on your local headlines for this week. Thanks for listening. We're Alexa and Michaela, and we'll see you next time with more news from around Rhode Island.
All right, we are back. You are listening to 88.3 WQRI, Roger Williams Student Radio here in Bristol, Rhode Island. We're going to start with some promos. First one being about a new campus publication out now in collaboration with the Society for Professional Journalists, aka SPJ, and Communities of Hope, titled The Capsized Tribune. We write on a variety of topics from campus updates to investigative pieces. There's always something going on. Check out our Instagram at Capsized Tribune or check out our website at capsize.rw.me for our most recent stories.
The Hawks Herald is Rogers' news outlet with their latest edition of the paper and newsstands around campus. Stay tuned for the next editions of the paper coming to you on November 13th and December 4th. You can also check them out online at thehawksherald.com or follow them on Instagram at Hawks Herald. Communities of Hope invites you to participate in a contest for naming our new AI chatbot. Submit your name suggestions via Instagram DM at Communities of Hope RI or email us at communityDrivenNews@gmail.com, and the winning entry will receive a $25 gift card to a local Bristol, Rhode Island business.
Roger Williams University History Department invites you to Recovering Thomas, From Slavery to Freedom on the Sea, a special exhibit and lecture uncovering the remarkable story of Thomas White, a 15-year-old who escaped slavery, found freedom through a network of abolitionists, and sailed the world as a ship's cook.
Join Dr. Charlotte Carrington Farmer, RWU alum and author Cynthia Elder, and RWU history major Rachel Cabral as they discuss their groundbreaking research recently featured in the Smithsonian Magazine and the ongoing work by RWU students to trace White's extraordinary life and legacy. The exhibit opens at 4:30 p.m., followed by the lecture at 5 on November 17th, 2025 at the Mary Taft White Center in the RWU Library. This month, Campus Democrats is putting together a food drive that is running till November 18th for the Roger Williams annual Thanksgiving food drive, and all of the proceeds will be donated to the East Bay Food Pantry. Please bring all non-perishable food items such as canned goods and non-food items like gift cards, toys, and Tupperware to the Political Science Pod located in Cass, which is the community... Nope. It's not the community, College of Arts and Sciences 112 and 119. The Roger Williams Faculty Senate is encouraging faculty to donate to the Student Emergency Fund. If you are capable of donating, please reach out to Communities of Hope as we can direct you to who to donate to. You can reach out to us on social media at Communities of Hope RI on Instagram or email us at communitydrivennews@gmail.com.
The Visual Arts Department is proud to present the artwork of seniors in intermediate and visual arts professional practices in a group exhibition entitled What Remains on December 11th from 4 to 6 p.m. What Remains is a collaborative exhibition that includes a range of media from painting to sculpture to metalwork. This exhibition focuses on life transitions and will be a unique experience in a 20-foot U-Haul truck parked right next to the Fine Arts Center, aka The Muffin. Check us out. Come out. The opening reception will be held on December 11th from 4 to 6 p.m. in front of The Muffin. There will be pizza provided.
We are now moving on to some of our news that our amazing and perfect news team has put together for us. Alex, take it away.
Reporter Jocelyn Flower covered the Rhode Island House of Representatives passage of Resolution 2025H 6125, affirming the state's commitment to protecting the rights of LGBTQIA+ residents. The bill asserts that every person has the rights to love freely and live openly, particularly in response to growing threats to safety and rights of transgender and non-binary individuals. Sponsored by Representative Rebecca Kislak, the resolution highlights Rhode Island's history of religious freedom and its dedication to bringing a diverse and inclusive state. We are important parts of the diverse threads of our community, Kislak said, stressing the importance of protecting residents' right to live authentically. The investigation showed how the resolution passed with a strong support from both House Speaker Joe Shekarski, I'm so sorry I butchered that last name, and LGBTQIA plus advocacy groups who voiced their gratitude to legislators for standing up against the rise in anti-LGBTQIA policies nationwide. Shekarski, a co-sponsor, emphasized that his leadership aims to ensure all Rhode Islanders have a voice, regardless of their gender identity or who they love. The resolution follows the Senate's earlier approval of a companion bill, and advocates like Denise Crooks of LGBTQIA plus Action, RI, celebrated the measure as an important statement of solidarity in challenging times. Quote, "We hope Rhode Islanders continue to be a state at the forefront of protecting and advancing LGBTQIA plus rights and equality," Crooks said. More of this at wpri.com.
Moving on to a story about the LGBTQ plus theater groups challenge federal arts funding restrictions. Reporter Alexander Castro covered the courtroom arguments in Rhode Island Latino Arts versus National Endowment for the Arts, a case testing whether a new federal policy under President Donald Trump's administration unlawfully restricts arts funding tied to LGBTQ plus content. Represented by the ACLU attorneys Vera Edelman and Scarlett Kim, the plaintiffs include Rhode Island Latino Arts, the Theater Offensive, National Queer Theater, and Theater Communications groups are seeking an injunction to block the NEA policy prohibiting grants for projects that promote gender ideology. Edelman argued that the rule violates artists' First and Fifth Amendment rights and forces organizations to self-censor their programming. Judge William E. Smith is expected to issue a decision by April 3rd, ahead of the agency's April 7th grant deadline. Within the investigation, it showed how government attorneys claimed the lawsuit was moot because the NEA, has since recited the rule, but Smith appeared skeptical, referring Supreme Court precedents. I'm so sorry, excuse me, guys. Precedents that limits defendants' ability to voluntarily cease contested actions. Kim argued that agency's challenge could be reversed at any time, calling the NEA's move a classic case of manipulation. Outside the courthouse, plaintiff representatives emphasized that the fight is about more than funding. It's about artistic freedom and inclusion. Art is important, and audiences are the most important part. So show up, cheer, and remind our government that creativity matters. More of this at the Rhode Island Current.com. Excuse me 1 second. Alex, would you mind reading the next news thing?
I would.
Just so that way I can stop coughing on air. Give me 1 second.
Go for it.
Thank you, guys.
Rhode Island Queer Hikes Group offers sanctuary amid national LGBTQ plus backlash. Reporter Edward Fitzpatrick covered how Rhode Island's Queer Hikes Group is providing refuge and community for LGBTQ plus residents amid renewed political attacks on queer rights. Founded by Mel Tebow during the pandemic, the group now meets 2 to 4 times a month across the state's trails, offering both connection and visibility. Quote, "Merely by existing, we're being activists, especially in today's current climate," Tebow said during an episode of Rhode Island Report's podcast. The hikes bring together people of all ages, fostering safety and solidarity in a moment when federal rollbacks, including the Trump administration's decision to end tailored 988 lifeline support for LGBTQ plus youth, have deepened anxiety and isolation. In the article, Fitzpatrick highlighted how Tebow and fellow organizer Elliot Henderson say the group's strength lies in its simple act of gathering. Quote, "We as queer people exist regardless of other folks' desires for us not to." Henderson said, "Nothing that community spaces like queer hikes counter efforts to ease queer visibility. Participants described the hikes as a chance to recharge and remember the long fight for LGBTQ plus rights with veteran member Sharon LeBeau." reflecting on how today's freedoms can't be taken for granted. For Tebow, that's the mission: to build local residents as National Protections Weekend. Quote, "It's important for queer adults and allies to make some noise and say, 'We're here,'" she said. "When things get hard federally, local communities have to step in and band together." More of this at bostonglobe.com.
Rhode Island to maintain LGBTQ plus support on 988 crisis line despite federal rollback. Reporter Jocelyn Flower covered Rhode Island's decision to preserve inclusive crisis services for LGBTQ plus residents, even as federal officials move to end specialized support nationwide. The U.S. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration announced that starting July 17th, the National 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline will discontinue its Press 3 option, which connected LGBTQ plus youth to trained counselors in partnership with the Trevor Project. Since its 2022 launch, that service has supported over 1.2 million calls. SAMHSA, the program's dedicated funds more than 33 million. The program's dedicated funds, which is more than 33 million, have now been fully expended, ending the targeted LGBTQ plus subnetworks. Excuse me, guys, I'm just not able to talk today. I don't know what's going on. Investigation uncovered and explained how Horizon Healthcare Partners, which manages Rhode Island's 988 system, said it will continue to offer confidential, compassionate care for all callers, reaffirming its commitment to the state's LGBTQ plus community. HHP also addressed misinformation circulating online, clarifying that Canada has not launched a crisis line specifically for LGBTQ plus Americans. The article showed that the agency's pledge as a sharp contrast to the national policy shifts, underscoring Rhode Island's ongoing effort to ensure that every resident in crisis has access to inclusive, affirming mental health support. More of this at WPRI. Yes. .com.
All right. Before we move on to our next story, more news, we have our most recent story from our immigration team. This week, they talked about protests and the violence that surrounds them. Take a listen.
While President Trump has been adamant about new policies regarding immigration, activists in cities and areas such as Portland, Chicago, Baltimore County, Maryland, Atlanta, Los Angeles, and New York have not backed down under his authority. Protests have been igniting all over the country from outrage in response to Trump's immigration crackdown. Portland, Oregon has been a hotspot in the eyes of the administration. Portland has been the home of numerous protests over the years. In 2018, there was a zero-tolerance policy which led to thousands of families being split up. In 2021, over 100 people marched against the Biden administration's immigration policies, and recently in October, tensions increased around the ICE facility, drawing the attention of federal officials. Portland's protests have been seen by the Trump administration as aggressive and dangerous. It's because of this that Trump has given his own administration the permission to go after, quote, activists who oppose his authoritarian regime. An article by the Rolling Stone highlights the story of a woman that has dedicated herself to helping the local protesters in Portland. A nursing assistant who goes publicly by the name of Prim to conceal her and protect her identity went to see the protest over the summer. She was hoping to take pictures, but when she arrived, the street was mostly empty. When crossing the street, she was shot at almost immediately with non-lethal projectiles. She met a few protesters who informed her, quote, ICE is over there, we are over here. They will shoot you if they can. She stopped her duties as a nursing assistant and now works as a street medic, treating injured protesters in Portland. In the same article, they said, she has been shot in the head with non-lethal projectiles and breathed so much tear gas she coughed up blood. Every night she wears dark clothing and covers her face to conceal her identity, and the government has made it known she's a, quote, enemy of the state. Other protesters have also shown up in inflatable costumes such as frogs, chickens, and hot dogs to display the ridiculous nature of these new policies. Prim stated that the ICE agents that are clashing with protesters are barely trained and resort to violence early on. She said in a statement to Rolling Stone, "They fire rubber bullets at protesters' heads and slip rock-hard marbles into the hoppers of their pepper ball guns." A lot of the time, ICE officials are joined by, quote, right-wing agitators. This includes big rig drivers. These are the people who operate commercial trucks and transport goods. Right-wing, quote, journalists who try to invade groups of protesters and expose personal information about them online. And the remaining members of gangs who go into crowds and attempt to provoke fights. They want to provoke protesters as a way to paint the demonstrations as violent and unsafe. She also said there are a lot of protest participants that have made a form of a will to say goodbye to their families for the sake of safety. Prim is among those who have recently said goodbye to her brother for the time being to keep him safe. She said, "He knows there's a good chance I don't make it out of this." Despite President Trump's new proclamation and ICE's excessive force, protests in Portland persist, but in other areas, organizations have gone completely underground. They had deleted group chats, canceled meetings, and completely scrubbed their online presence to take a step back from organizing. Beforehand, news of upcoming protests would be spread on social media and organization websites. Despite weeks of consistently peaceful protests and events, some protesters have gotten out of line and thrown rocks and other objects, started small fires, and caused destruction to buildings. Due to the actions of a few protesters, the Trump administration has labeled many organizations as, quote, terrorist groups. The administration has also capitalized on the instances of violence to give ICE and military forces permission to use physical force. This has resulted in unwarranted arrests and intense use of tear gas and mace. The administration is reasoning their actions by stating that Portland has become a, quote, war zone full of activist thugs. Many protesters and outside viewers are blaming the National Guard and the ICE officials for the violence. A federal grand jury in Chicago indicted 6 people, including local politicians, on charges of interfering with a federal agent during a chaotic protest outside an immigration detention center site in September. In Chicago, federal agents have flocked to the area as part of Trump's immigration crackdown. They have arrested over 3,000 people and have repeatedly clashed with protesters and residents. The protest leading to these charges took place on September 26th outside of an ICE facility in the suburbs near Chicago. They repeatedly gathered in this spot, sometimes blocking the driveway and getting into physical altercations with federal agents. The agents would retaliate with tear gas, pepper balls, and physical force. The defendants were a part of a larger group that tried to block the driveway to the facility. Some of the group pounded on the vehicle, stood in front of it, and pushed against it to the point of damaging the side mirror and windshield wiper. One person in the group scratched the word pig into the side of the car. They were charged with interfering with a federal agent and conspiring to interfere with an agent. Andrew S. Boutros, the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, said in a statement, "All federal officials must be able to discharge the duties of their office without confronting force, intimidation, or threats. As we have warned repeatedly, we will seek to hold accountable those who cross the line from peaceful protests to unlawful actions or conspiracies that interrupt, hinder, or impede the due administration of justice." Those indicted include Cap Abazagla, who is a Democratic candidate running for Congress, Brian Straw, an Oak Park Village trustee, and Kat Sharp, a candidate for the Cook County Board of Commissioners. Sharp said in a statement, "I am confident that a jury of my peers will see these charges for exactly what they are, another effort by the Trump administration to frighten people out of participating in protests and exercising their First Amendment rights." In the Illinois area, the practices of federal officers have been criticized by the community. Agents have used tear gas on protesters and bystanders while making arrests. Federal officials claim that these extreme measures have been appropriate after agents have been the target of direct threats. Federal Judge Sarah L. Ellis placed restrictions on agents' actions after a lawsuit accused them of unfairly deploying tear gas and using force. Judge Ellis voiced her concerns that these agents will not follow these restrictions, and she has ordered Senior Border Patrol official Gregory Bovino to appear in her courtroom each weeknight to recount the actions of enforcement that day. In other news, after Attorney General Pam Bondi's letter banning sanctuary jurisdictions, Baltimore County, Maryland has been taken off the list, according to CBS News. Baltimore County signed a memorandum of understanding with ICE to collaborate on immigration enforcement. County Executive Kathy Klausmeiser said that this agreement makes no changes. She says this agreement makes no changes to the Baltimore County Department of Corrections standard practices and aligns Baltimore County with peer jurisdictions throughout the state of Maryland. Despite this release statement, many residents gathered outside of a Home Depot in the area that very next day. The rally was a part of the National Ice Out of Home Depot event. The protest called on the store and other businesses to stop allowing policies that endangered the immigrant workers. The reason why places like Home Depot are being targeted is because of how day laborers stand around the vicinity, open the parking lots, trying to get work, according to Stephanie Pedras, a participant of the protest. She joined dozens of others to make a statement that enough is enough, and they don't stand for the most recent actions of ICE enforcement. Petros also stated, they're just trying to make money for their families, not trying to do anything. Another protester, Ben Cruz, said he often hires migrant workers outside of the Home Depot to do projects at his home, and 9 ICE trucks came to the location a few days beforehand. He stated they could come back and they could sequester, get kidnapped, and taken away without anybody knowing that they've been taken and where they've been sent to. The protesters informed CBS that the best thing immigrants can do is know their rights. They have been handing out red cards, and they are to remind immigrants about their right to refuse a search without a warrant, the right to remain silent, and the right to speak with a lawyer before signing any documents. They sometimes have scripts of what to say in English in their native language. These cards have been handed out to day laborers that tell their rights if ICE shows up to their homes or places of work. In Atlanta, protests have been prominent all year. Back in June of 2025, a protest drew hundreds of people despite being met by police in riot gear. The rally took place on Buford Highway, also known as the city's International Corridor, because of the large number of immigrants that live and work in that area. There were fireworks from protesters and tear gas from police, and in that haze, a man was pushed to the ground and hit his head on the concrete. Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr announced that he intends to bring domestic terrorism charges against protesters involved in violence. He stated in a press release, "All Americans have the right to peacefully protest. No American has the right to destroy property, loot businesses, or attack law enforcement officers." The former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms also weighed in on the protests happening in the area. She said, "Donald Trump's decision to defy local leaders in deploying the National Guard and Marines is putting people at risk, wasting resources and distracting local law enforcement, all to grab more power for himself." Protests have also taken a dangerous turn in Los Angeles. Recently, 12 people were charged with alleged violence against police earlier this year. Many of the charges came from people throwing things at officers from a freeway overpass. The protest started small and peaceful, but it quickly turned violent. After law enforcement officers used extreme measures, such as tear gas and smoke bombs, to disperse the crowd, more protesters arrived. Cars were set on fire, and highway patrol officers were pelted with items from overhead, and officials responded with less than lethal rounds of tear gas. For example, in Chicago, federal agents have deployed tear gas and shot pepper balls. They have also arrested some of them. Currently, New York has hundreds of people inside immigration courthouses in New York City, which is more than any in the country. The news of these arrests have sparked outrage in New York, leading to several protests. The ICE officials began covering their face to shield their identity for their own safety. Usually, police officers and ICE officials have to display names and faces while conducting their duties. Public figures such as Comptroller Brad Lander have been escorting families to and from court hearings. Lander was arrested in June as he escorted a man out of court. He grabbed onto the man's shirt and refused to let go and demanded to see the arrest warrant. He was detained for several hours before being released with no charges. Other volunteers have also been accompanying immigrants to court, and they have also been getting information to inform their families of what has happened and also to get legal representation for immigrants that have been detained to holding cells at 26 Federal Plaza have complained about the conditions they are being forced to live in. They say they have spent days inside along with dozens of people shoved into various rooms. They have nowhere to sleep, and others have limited access to food and water. Members of Congress, including Representative Dan Goldman, have confronted ICE officials for access to the holding cells to inspect the conditions. Him and other lawmakers have the power to make unannounced visits to ICE holding cells and jails for oversight, but they were denied entry. After they were denied access, lawmakers staged a sit-in. While these lawmakers were not allowed to go into the jails, a video was acquired by the New York Immigration Coalition showing cramped and unsanitary holding cells. In September, a federal judge issued a preliminary injunction requiring improved sanitary conditions, which also limits the number of people allowed in those cells. This dramatically improved the conditions. Memorials have been made on the fence of the ICE facility to show solidarity to those who've been detained. Journalists have taken it upon themselves to document their arrests by ICE officials, which have become increasingly more violent. One photographer was hospitalized after falling when an agent shoved another photojournalist into him. Families of the detained have been making choices on whether or not to show up to court hearings in support of their family members. Showing up could increase their risk of also being detained. Some advocates have already noticed a decrease in the amount of people showing up to court in support of detained migrants. Some local officials have partaken in disobedient actions. They have blocked the entrance where detained migrants are driven out in vans. For months, officials have been focusing on arrests inside the courthouse at 26 Federal Plaza and ICE check-ins, but they have taken to the streets to do a full sweep. They have arrested vendors along the street, and the National Guard has been following the orders of Trump. As demonstrated by the handful of examples in this episode, protests are occurring all over the country. While mainly big cities are receiving the spotlight, many citizens are not giving up. Smaller cities like Providence are standing up for Mamadou, a member of the Providence community who was taken away by ICE, and towns such as Burlington, Massachusetts, where townsfolk are standing outside of ICE offices. Beyond categorizing protests by town or city, social media has taken protesting to another level. For some, social media is their only source of news or for spreading information. For others, it may be the only way to get first-hand accounts of what is occurring to support what is reported in the broadcast news or articles they read. Despite the format of protests, it is clear that many U.S. citizens are not giving up. They fear what ICE and the National Guard may do to their homes, but their mission is to protect their community. For Hope Pod Live, I am Addison Mason.
All right, this is WQRI 88.3 FM, Roger Williams Student Radio here in Bristol, Rhode Island. Thank you so much to Addison Mason and our immigration team. And now for our feature story on the RW Barbershop Club Fashion Show.
This past Saturday, Roger Williams University Barbershop Club hosted its 5th annual fashion show with the help of multiple campus affinity groups, combining the members of Multicultural Student Union, the Asian American Alliance, the Hispanic and Latinx Student Association, Women of Color Club, Global Hawks, and Barbershop. The fashion show attempted to showcase the vast variety of multicultural elements and Black excellence on Roger Williams campus. The theme of this year's show was paradox, with each round highlighting different polar opposite styles of dress. From rural to urban and minimalist to maximalist, this theme allowed the students to shine on the models. Allowed the student models to shine with their own creativity and storytelling. The show also offered a round of tight-fitting versus loose. Models walked side by side, representing the two sides as a comparison.
The show ended with a culture round. Models showcased different dances and outfits to represent their own cultures. The represented areas and cultures that were included were Greece, Guatemala, the Philippines, African American, Grenada, Jamaica, Mexico, Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Puerto Rico. If you're interested to learn more about this, we're doing a full story next week on the Barbershop Club Fashion Show, so stay tuned for that.
Moving on, we're going to be covering a little bit more news that our news team has put together for us for the week. In a report conducted by the wpri, they covered Cody Garcia's life through the foster care system and how he got from being pushed around in the system to a freshman in college. His placement into foster care was described as traumatizing, leaving him with long-lasting behavioral issues that left him in a rebellious state. Things started looking up for Garcia when he started taking the right steps forward. The investigation showed that Garcia met the Boys Town, New England's Director of Development, Glenn Hoffman, when he was living at the Boys Town family home in Portsmouth. His time at Boys Town shaped him with the proper and positive steps forward to breaking the cycle of the foster care system. Garcia said that the community felt more like the family I never had when describing the home. After leaving Boys Town, Garcia kept in touch with Hoffman. Since Hoffman has reported about how good progress that Garcia has come since they first met. Now Garcia has graduated high school and is currently working at a restaurant in Providence. Furthermore, he's enrolled in Nichols College to study hospitality. Garcia told WPRI that Hoffman encouraged him to take the right steps forward and break the common cycle that the foster care system leaves. He hopes to spread his story to others and to inspire them surrounding the common misconceptions of the foster care system and the capabilities of other individuals that are in the position he was in. More of this at WPRI.com. Moving on to another story, Alexander Castro with the Rhode Island Current covered the oversight hearing that addressed the first public documentation of child fatalities within the child welfare system. This year's child fatality report from the Office of Child Advocate. The report details 30 incidents, all dark chapters of young Rhode Island children between 2019 and 2024. Representative Julie Casimiro, a North Kingston Democrat, said this, excuse me, guys, I don't know what is going on with my voice today, but it is rough. Excuse me 1 second while I take a quick sip of water.
Do you want me to finish the story?
No, I think I got it. Excuse me. So sorry. I've been beating a sickness all week, so anyways. Representative Julie Casimiro, a North Kingston Democrat, said this is by far the worst oversight hearing I have ever had to sit through. The investigation highlighted how all of the incidents involved substances and all of the youths had past or current involvement with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. Alongside this, the report was the first public documentation of child fatalities and injuries released in over 6 years. 118 pages of the report varied from infants or toddlers exposed to substances or teenagers who knowingly took drugs. It was shown that incidents surrounding younger children were more likely to occur when living with parents or relatives, and the opposite for the older kids, showing that they were often used drugs while in DCYF placements. The report showed recommendations that are either new, old, or unaccomplished, according to the Child Advocate. This report was curated as a part of their position to oversee DCYF. Within the report and hearing, it showed that the child safety is way beyond just the responsibility of DCYF, and the system is extremely connected and important to the welfare of children within the system. Read more about this on the RhodeIslandCurrent.com.
Wrongful removal leads to child abuse tragedies, artificial shortage of foster parents. In a report by Richard Wexler at the Rhode Island Current, an investigation was conducted to assess what is wrong with child welfare in Rhode Island. Kayla David, a vice president of foster care agency, wrote to the Rhode Island Current suggesting that foster parents need more support while also considering the lack of foster parents. The investigation explored the state's devotion to, instead of working on routes to fix the issues within the system and families, to tear the families apart and throw children into the system extremely easily. The report shows that children that are put into the foster care system often have rare circumstances of abuse in any nature, and that there are usually very minimal reasons for taking a child out of a home and putting them into foster care. It is shown in study after study that in typical cases, children are far better in their own homes than in the foster care system. Within the investigation, it was shown that Rhode Island does not have too few foster parents. It has too many foster children. The report said, quote, "Take another look and see if you can spot that elephant. Rhode Island does not have too few foster parents. Rhode Island has too many foster children. Instead of removing children from their homes, the state has to do a better job at supporting families through tough times in comparison to creating more harm." More of this at rhodeislandcurrent.com. Federal benefits belong with foster kids, not administration. In a report by What's Up Newport, it explored the bill that was introduced at the last legislative session surrounding federal benefits being left to the foster children that are entitled to this money in comparison to the practices using these funds for administrative costs. The investigation of this bill highlights how young people that age out of the foster care system already typically lack family or other network support, alongside how most do not have the life skills to allow them to already be self-sufficient. Given this, it's shown that 25% of young adults who age out of the foster care system either end up homeless or incarcerated within 18 months of exiting the system. Representative Julie Casimiro said, quote, "We ask you to think of these children who have endured a lifetime's worth of stress, trauma, and tragedy before they even reached adulthood," end quote. Highlighting that these kids are already placed in these horrible positions, they don't need any more stress. Quote, "These kids deserve a chance to thrive and they deserve our continued support and help," end quote. The money that they are owed would allow for better transition from the foster care system to a fulfilled life. Support of the bill is critical to ensure that children aging out of the foster care system have every financial tool that is available to them when they are placed into society on their own without any help. The legislation would provide financial hope and opportunity for children who have lost a significant lack in their lives. More of this at What's Up NEWP.
Just a reminder, you are listening to WQRI 88.3 FM, Roger Williams University Student Radio in Bristol, Rhode Island. Thank you very much for our news team and all of their amazing stories that they have put together for us this week. I'm going to continue with our final news story. In the article by The Independent, they highlighted the 10-year-old tradition surrounding assisting those in adoption or foster care as they transition into new placements. The Duffel Bag Bash is organized by Adoption Rhode Island, the Office of the Child Advocate, and the Rhode Island attorney Lisa M. Iwan. The event surrounds donations of a new rolling duffel bag or suitcase $25 gift card for older youth or a new background for attending children. The event was launched when Iwan saw too many youths arriving in new homes with garbage bags. Instead of allowing these children, of which already struggle financially and emotionally, to go without proper ways to carry their belongings between the already difficult placements, people decided to do something about it. Now, each year, people gather by donating duffel bags or backpacks to children in the system. Not only is this an event that brings people together, it shines light on the discrepancies of the system. Please read more about this on theindependentri.com.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here as we transition into the second half, which is going to look a little bit different today. I'm going to stay on air, and Callie is going to step out. We're going to have a live interview with some folks from the Garden Time, like I mentioned earlier. So while we transition to that and wait for our lovely other host, Alana, to get here, take a listen to some tunes.
All right, here is the Oogum Boogum song by Brenton Wood. I really like this song, so everybody please enjoy. I will see you guys later. Thanks so much for listening.
All right, we are back, and you are listening to 88.3 WQRI, Roger Williams University Student Radio in Bristol, Rhode Island, and this is Hope Pod Live with your weekly news. We have now welcomed in our other host, Alana. So, Alana, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so we have some more news for you. Take a listen.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. We are Alexa and Michaela, and here's a look at some of today's top local stories. From Election Day results to the SNAP shutdown, let's dive into what's making news across Rhode Island.
Mysterious light seen in Tuesday's sky has a simple explanation. Residents across the region were left puzzled Tuesday evening after spotting a glowing spiral-shaped light moving high and above the horizon. Many who witnessed the strange formation described it as an eerie swirl or a hazy S floating through the night sky, leading to plenty of guesses online of what it could be. As it turns out, the light show had nothing to do with extraterrestrials. The usual glow was linked to the launch of a European Space Agency rocket carrying a new weather satellite into orbit. Experts say the swirl appeared when the rocket released excess fuel into the upper atmosphere. At that altitude, the sunlight illuminated the vapor trail, creating the bright, shifting pattern that caused so many people's attentions. The satellite launched as a part of the agency's border mission to improve weather and climate monitoring it from space. So while the sight might have seemed mysterious, it was simply a striking reminder of how science and space can light up our skies.
Election Day results from key races in Rhode Island and Mass. In Providence, preliminary results show Democratic voters on the east side chose Jill Davidson as their candidate in a special election for Ward 2 seat on the city council. The seat was vacated by Helen Anthony, who stepped down to focus on her health after she was hit and seriously injured by an ATV in California 2 summers ago. Davidson defeated 3 other candidates, David Caldwell, Jeffrey Levy, and McDermott, with 50% of the vote. She will go on to face Republican Axel Brito in a special election on Tuesday, December 2nd. As the Globe Rhode Island's Dan McGowan reports, it's turned into the most expensive council race in the city's history. In Fall River, Mayor Paul Coogan faced a challenge from Gabriel Boomer Amaro, a Fall River native and Army veteran. They were the top 2 vote-getters in September's preliminary election. Coogan, who's been the city's mayor since 2019, was elected to a 3rd term, according to preliminary results. More on WPRI.
The SNAP shutdown. Rhode Island officials are preparing for possible interruptions to federal food assistance programs as the budget standoff in Washington leaves the future of SNAP funding in question. The state's Department of Human Services said it's monitoring developments closely and warned that benefits scheduled for November could be delayed if federal dollars don't come in time. More than 145,000 Rhode Islanders depend on SNAP each month to help put food on the table. The program provides roughly $29 million in federal nutrition support statewide. Governor Dan McKee has signed an emergency declaration aimed at giving the state flexibility to respond quickly if payments are disrupted. His office said Rhode Island is coordinating with the food banks and community groups to make sure residents in need still have access to meals. This situation underscores how many of our neighborhoods rely on this assistance just to get by, McKee said. We're ready to act to make sure nobody goes hungry. The Rhode Island Company Food Bank is also vamping up operations, saying demand could spike if benefits are delayed. The organization estimates that as many as 1 in 8 residents could be affected by even a short lapse. While the funding outlook remains uncertain, recent updates to the SNAP program still stand. As of October 1st, 2025, maximum monthly benefits increased. A single-person household can now receive up to $298, while a family of 4 can receive $994. Residents can find the latest information or assistance at dhs.ri.gov or through the DHS helpline.
Authorities identify 3 that died in Woonsocket shooting. Investigators said that 24-year-old Sean Rivera killed his girlfriend's mother and her boyfriend before turning the gun on himself. Rivera's 19-year-old girlfriend managed to escape and run down the street to a nearby business for help. Police said they were called to 411 Rathbun Street in Woonsocket just before 7 p.m. on Monday. When they got there, they said they found 3 people who had been shot. Investigators revealed that Rivera and his teenage girlfriend were inside the second-floor apartment discussing their strained relationship while Rivera pulled a gun and demanded sex. The teen allegedly later ran to her mother's room, saying she'd been sexually assaulted. Police said Rivera gained access to the bedroom and shot 40-year-old Kimberly Peranuzzi multiple times. His 19-year-old girlfriend managed to escape. Peranuzzi's partner, 45-year-old Donald Roderick Jr., was coming home to the apartment around the same time of the chaos. Police said Rivera also shot Donald before turning the gun on himself. This from WJAR.
And that's a wrap on your local headlines for this week. Thank you for listening. We're Alexa and Michaela, and we'll see you next time with more news from around Rhode Island.
All right, welcome back. You are listening to WQRI 88.3 FM, and this is Hope Pod Live. Next, we're going to have our SJN Story of the Week. Communities of Hope is one of the 8 newsrooms in the country selected for Solutions Journalism Network Student Media Challenge. We are investigating solutions for the mental health challenge of incarcerated youth and youth within the foster care system. This week, we have Emily Cotter and Mario Monteiro of an organization called the Garden Time, which brings gardens to prison to make the rehabilitation system better for the inmates. Thank you both for being here. So welcome. Happy to be here. All right. So I'm going to have you both introduce yourself and just kind of explain a little bit about what you do for Garden Time. Emily, if you'd like to start.
Sure. My name is Emily Cotter, and I have been with Garden Time since 2018. I started as a volunteer in our prison gardens. And around that time was really when the organization was super small, no staff, barely any volunteers, and really starting to think about how we can continue to support our students as they prepared to leave incarceration. Students like Mario, who's been with Garden Time longer than me, but at that time, we were starting to prepare folks for reentering the community and reentering the workforce. And my background is in sustainable agriculture, farming, and I did a lot of work around drug policy advocacy and, different, like running small business and stuff. So I came on kind of to help prepare folks to start developing those job skills. And it all kind of took off from there.
Amazing. Mario?
Yeah, I'm Mario Monteiro. I've been working with Garden Time on the outside for the past year. I got out July 2024. I took the Green Reentry job training, which was 8 weeks of paid job training in the green industry. But prior to that, I had been in the garden program in max and medium security for 12 years. That's how I met Kate and Vera, the other co-founder. But what I do now with Garden Time is part of the Canopy crew. We are tree stewards. We plant, water, and maintain street trees in the city of Providence, which are historically low canopy neighborhoods. And I also, teach some advocacy during, the Green Reentry job training, which I just started doing this year.
Amazing. And then I don't know which one of you would like to start with this question, but if you could briefly describe the mission and goals of Garden Time.
Emily can probably recite that better than me, but I think the mission, at least from someone who was incarcerated, is to provide, the women and the men, just an opportunity to escape, the walls and the bars and the fences. I think the mission is to, humanize, us as individuals, allow us to focus on something other than, our worst mistakes. And then, also on the outside to provide people with the skills, to succeed in the green industry and connect us, hopefully to employment.
Very cool.
Yeah, I did have to bring cheat sheets for the mission. But no, yeah, Mario hit it spot on, because at the core of what we do, really, it is about humanizing the situation at the ACI here in Rhode Island, and the therapeutic aspects of planting seeds, watching them grow, like touching grass, grounding yourself. That's really the heart of it, but it really has evolved into a real workforce training program, and that, as Mario described, it's kind of like a three-pronged thing. So we've got, our in-prison programming, which is what started it all, and everything we've done since then was really a response to the needs of our students that we've grown to know and love over the past, over 10 years. And so we've got the Green Reentry Job Training Program for when folks come out. That's like a landing spot, like Mario said. Amazing 8-week program, and we also now employ formerly incarcerated Rhode Islanders. So hopefully, I will probably be the only person that Garden Time hired that's not one of our graduates, because, like Mario said, we have a lot of really important work to do in the city of Providence, which is in line with a lot of other nonprofit organizations that are working to expand tree canopy. And there's a real need for that work, and there's a real lack of folks to do that work. And so it really just fits nicely with our need to build supportive workforce training and employment opportunities for folks that have been through incarceration. So, yeah, it's about plants and trees and stuff, but it's really about the people. It's really about the pathway from incarceration back into the community in a more positive sort of. There's a big mindset change that comes with it.
Yeah, it's always amazing when you can see, real change in the community and actually helping people get back on their feet. What's been your experience with the justice system? What have you observed with the mental health care that's provided within the system, and have you seen any issues with that? You can, feel free to negate a question or kind of whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Well, my experience is 23 years. I was incarcerated at 17. Spent 3 years in Supermax. The high security was what they call it. I, did a lot of my time in Max. Yeah, it wasn't easy. The experience, it's tough. Prison's tough. It can be a place that makes people worse, which it does. And, it can be a place where people grow, and yeah, it was tough. I was sentenced to 2 consecutive life bids, and essentially I'm, supposed to be in there until I'm 50 or 60 years old. So I went in there with the mindset originally, like I didn't care. And at some point, like I said, I went to high security. I was like, I don't want to be here. I want to go home. I need to change the things I'm doing. So I started doing that, and that involved me doing so many things, reconnecting with my family, just educating myself. A lot of my education came because of me. I wasn't allowed to take a lot of programs because of the time I was doing. But it was also, seeing, prison brings out the worst in people just because of the environment and the way that it's structured. And that's not just the people who are there because they made mistakes, but it's also the people who work there. It's the medical personnel, it's the correctional officers. It's just a horrible place where you see a lot of hopelessness, you see a lot of abuse. Us as inmates abusing each other, but also the guards abusing their power and authority, and the same thing with the medical personnel. They're not professionals. And in regards to, mental health, I think that was a big problem. I went in there, having experienced a lot of trauma the first 17 years of my life. Just going to prison at 17 was extremely traumatic. Though I did, commit a crime. I took someone's life, and, there has to be punishment for that. I'm very remorseful for it. Saying that, but there was a lot of trauma that I dealt with as a kid, and a lot of us deal with it, and prison doesn't address that. It actually compounds it. And going in there young and having to deal with, seeing, people get, people fighting, people getting, assaulted with weapons, prison guards, treating people, like animals, can be tough. And mental health was non-existent, for many, many, many years. Most of the years I was in Max, I did not see any adequate mental health care. I think if you had went to a counselor and spoke about, some of the things that you were going through, maybe even said, I'm in a dark place right now, I feel like I might hurt myself. you go to segregation for that. They don't give you the proper help. So I think a lot of people have trust issues when it comes to speaking about them problems. But I did see when I went to Medium that, they tried at least one program specifically, which was a program that addressed people who are gang involved. They talked a lot about trauma. I was 36 when I took that program, and I think that was really the first time that I was able to hear and have deep conversations about trauma and what it meant and what it can do to you as a child, and if you don't address it, what it does to you as an adult. And, and just also like being part of Garden Time was a form of mental health and therapy, because you're outside of the, if you're in that garden in the prison in Max, if you don't look up or look at them walls, you can be lost in there and forget that you're in a prison. So in a way, that is like, it's therapeutic and it can help address mental health. And then you have, Emily, Kate, and Vera who come in and treat you with respect and treat you like a human being, and that goes a long way in an environment like prison.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. Emily, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, thank you, Mario. And I will just add to what he said. From my perspective, I have not been incarcerated. I've obviously spent a good amount of time here at the ACI here in Rhode Island with our students. And I think, of course, everything Mario said is spot on. And I just think that, we can clearly see that the justice system and the carceral system here in the United States and in Rhode Island is doing what it is designed to do. The dehumanization, the lack of adequate opportunities, that's all very common in this system. And I think Mario and programs like ours, and anybody who rehabilitates themselves while incarcerated is doing that basically in spite of the system, not because of it. They're doing, that's like a self-driven process for the most part from what we've seen. And, as Mario said, there's so much context and trauma that goes into what brings folks into that system. And so it's like moving from one traumatic, maybe toxic environment to another differently and similarly traumatic and toxic culture in terms of correctional officers and the way, folks that are incarcerated are treated. And, one thing that Mario mentioned that I just wanted to highlight is, the use of segregation, or what's known as solitary confinement, which is still quite common in, many states, including Rhode Island, which really is, the definition of like mental torture. And so to use that as a response to mental health crises is obviously, in my opinion, backwards. But just from my perspective of working within the prison walls, I would just say as a person that has led privileged life and stuff, it's quite a humbling experience. And a lot of our students and trainees that come out into our job training program have, like Mario, served longer sentences. And so they need a little bit of extra support. Some of our students haven't, technology has changed quite a bit since they went in, probably. And so there's a lot of catching up to do with that and everything else you can imagine that's changed so rapidly in the world out here. But we're like really well suited to provide that support. And also it's very clear to anybody who, whether they meet our students inside or outside when they get out, is that there's a really unique and incredible resiliency that comes with going through all of those experiences. And it's kind of, it's fitting because of the, somebody who's had those experiences could be like one of the best employees or business owners or contributors to the community that you could ever find. And so a lot of times we will bring employer partners or volunteers into our gardens to meet our students to really connect the dots of between the job training program and where we started. And people, including myself, will come out and be like, what? I would hire these folks in a minute. I would, trust them with my life. And, Mario and I have been friends for a long time. And so he, was one of the first people, that I felt like that about. And so, yeah, there's huge issues with mental health in the criminal justice system. And so it really takes like a holistic approach to like not only teaching technical skills, but really teaching like getting to know yourself, understanding how your brain works, what your learning style is, your working style, and how you can work on a team with others, despite or because of all the experiences that you have. People have really unique skill sets, and our job is really just to help them understand that and figure out how to share it with the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you both had already kind of mentioned this a little bit, but if you could talk a little bit more about the Green Reentry Program and kind of what that looks like and how it works for both of you on both ends of this organization.
Yeah, I was fortunate to take it 30 days after I got out. It was 8 weeks of a mixture of classroom work, out in the field, hands-on, internships. It was, a combination of learning specifically about green industry jobs, pruning, tree cutting, composting, gardening, the cannabis industry, also being exposed to potential employer partners who, we intern with, who also demonstrate, some of the skills required to work in their field. And that's also how I met the other person that I work for. He's an employer partner with Garden Time. We did a demo on tree cutting and, running a chipper, and I work with him 2 days a week. It was great. We talked a lot also about, not just like, okay, garden and farm and plant the seed and it grows, but Stephanie is, and Munoz, I think, formerly incarcerated, teaches, along with Sada. They teach about environmental justice and a big reason why we plant trees in inner city communities, and why these communities, like I said, historically don't have, this investment. There's a lot of disinvestment in these communities. One of them happened to be, canopy, and what, the benefits of having this canopy. There's so many, it's, mental health, nature, property value goes up. You're paying less on utility bills because, it's blocking the sun. But they really, delved into, the history of racism and the history of redlining and what it meant. A lot of us, I was fortunate enough to read a lot of this stuff in prison, but there's some people, this was the first time they heard about, redlining and what it meant to the community. And, okay, why does, South Providence not have as many, trees as, the east side or the Mount Hope section of Providence? And there's a reason for that, because of the people who live there, what they look like, the government, decided, and people know this, okay, we're not worthy, for this investment. Let's draw this red line around this community. Let's make sure that you live right next to all these industries that are going up, because so now you're dealing with pollution. But we learned a lot about that, and then it was a community. It's still a community of people. There's a few different nonprofits that work at our office, but it's really a community of people who care about the same things and who care about the success of everybody who goes through that job training. And we have once a month wellness sessions that Stephanie runs, which is essentially a time for graduates of the Green Reentry job training to go back and just talk and be around, people who and it's only for the formerly incarcerated people, to go back and be around each other and talk and just decompress.
Yeah, it's really cool to be able to reconnect with people who have similar shared experiences and trauma, while you're also, doing things to better yourself and your mental health. So really, really cool opportunity. I
relate more to people that I've spent time in prison with than I'm more comfortable around them just because they know me, and this adjustment. Like Emily mentioned, the technology and how much of an adjustment it is for us. It's also it's tough sometimes adjusting to people because we're all different out here. And I spent 23 years in jail, and sometimes there's a facade that you put up, and there's things that you learn, and it takes a while to unlearn that. And society is different, so.
Yeah.
It is, you're right.
Emily, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, and you both really nailed it too. It really is about the community, and like we call it like our family, because it's like we just keep adding to it, and most folks like stick around. And like you said, it's a lot of times you hear when someone's getting ready to get out of prison, it's like a lot of folks are thinking about how to not end up in the same situation, right? So a lot of that's about changing your environment, and maybe it's about changing the people you're hanging around with, and that may influence you one way or the other. And so what we've really seen is like that being flipped to where we have that community where folks can feel understood, supported, and seen, like people getting out and from doing however many years and seeing Mario and Victor and Kyle and all these folks in our office that they've known for years, that they're friends with. So it feels safe, but it's also a completely new lens to be re-entering the community with, in terms of like that mindset change of like you mentioned, making a positive impact not only on yourself and your mental health, but your community. When we talk about planting trees, we're really, there's a real like a very real impact for somebody who knows that they've had in the past a negative impact on their community in various ways, and they've served their time for that, and to be able to come back out and plant trees that are going to clean the air and provide shade for like your grandchildren and their children, because it's it takes a while, right? There's so many metaphors in the work that we do, but it's expanding our time scale of the impact that we can have, and like Mario said, just to briefly mention about the training program. We do run it twice a year, in the spring and in the fall, and it's 8 weeks. We have about a dozen trainees each class, and so we've graduated, I believe, about 8 classes at this point, so almost 100 graduates, and so that our community is getting stronger all the time, and like Mario mentioned, it is a unique combination of those technical skills in the field training, and those what they might call soft skills, or like self-actualization, and the technology and stuff, and like even like talking about recycling and composting. But and like Mario also said, a lot of folks have not been in school for a very long time, if ever, apart from the classes, and programming that they've taken inside, and maybe haven't really been part of a workplace, a traditional sort of workplace team in a long time, or maybe in their life, depending on what they did for work before. So we, really understand that, and can meet people where they're at in terms of, what their life experience has been. And then we've realized pretty quickly that for a lot of people it was their first time graduating from anything when they graduated from our 8-week program. And so we have a really fun and special graduation ceremony, and we started getting caps, and, we go all out, and it's a really important day for obviously not only the trainees, but everybody who's involved with the program and all of our partners. And just the last thing I'll say is that, all of the employer partners that we work with obviously understand what we do, and so we can feel comfortable, and our trainees and graduates can feel comfortable knowing that we've got their back, and we would never send them somewhere where they wouldn't be supported and appreciated, for who they are, and hopefully not judged for their past, which is obviously one of the main reasons that we exist, because if you have a felony conviction or a criminal record, that can obviously severely impact your ability to get a job and housing and all these things that are hard enough to get in this economy. So, yeah.
So could you see Garden Time's project being expanded into juvenile justice in Rhode Island, or even like any other, adult prisons across the country?
Yeah.
This could be for either of you.
Yeah, I think it's common sense. I think for the longest time, my experience, the only job training that was available in a prison was Garden Time. like, yeah, they came in maximum security as a garden for people who weren't going home originally, but you're learning skills there. We were learning how to communicate. We were learning them soft skills. We were learning about gardening and composting, what this tool was, what this tool's use was for. So that's job training. And for them to, some years later, expand it to actually having a job training on the outside was perfect. And I think it could and should be implemented in prisons all across the country because, the green industry is growing. It's very important to care about your environment and your community. So yeah, definitely, I could see that happening.
Yeah, and it's one of those classic balance of expand, that sort of sustainable growth, or growing slowly. We think about because we've expanded so much in the past year or two into, in terms of what the Canopy crew does out in the community and the services that we provide and all that. But we, of course, are still a pretty small organization, and funding for the type of work that we do is even more limited now than it was before, in terms of what the federal government is willing to support, and thereby what the state has to offer in terms of funding as well. But I will say that there's definitely, of course, like Mario said, a need, and we see from work. We don't work a ton with the youth ourselves, but our partner organization, we share an office with Groundwork Rhode Island. They have a green team of youth, and so there are organizations who focus on the youth, and obviously that's super important, early intervention. And I'll say that we serve all sorts of folks, but we have a lot of experience and a specialty, I guess I would say, in serving folks that have done long sentences. And so, of course, better to catch people before they have to go through that experience to benefit from a program like ours. So hopefully there will be opportunities for programs like ours to do more early intervention. There are already, but we also have a ton of amazing graduates with a lot of skills and a lot of passion for serving their community. So I do expect that we'll see even more, organizations and nonprofits and projects pop up from our amazing graduates. But I will say also that we used to have a garden in the women's facility, and we are going to be back at the women's facility, hopefully, starting in the next year or so. And that's, again, just been a capacity issue for us to be able to do what we do well while growing at the rate that we are. And as far as around the country, I will just say that there are certainly other programs as in Massachusetts, Oregon, California, Maine, but there are certainly not enough. We had a young woman come and intern with us last season conducting research about this type of program, and she was actually from Texas, and she had spent the previous summer in Oregon doing a similar internship, and I thought it was really disappointing, I guess, that she, coming from a state as big as Texas, when I can only imagine how many people are incarcerated there, that she had to go to both coasts of the country to find a program like ours. There should be 10 programs like ours in Texas alone, in my opinion. So there's certainly not enough, and I certainly see us growing, and I think that will be probably by the hand of a lot of our graduates.
Amazing. Yeah. So you mentioned everything that you guys do for the community, and of course it's amazing work, and we thank you for it. But how can the community help you and get involved in Garden Time?
Oh, I can take this one, Mario. Well, you can certainly, we have a website, www.gardentime.us, and so you can always go there. You can sign up for our newsletter, I guess. It's very rarely sent out, but if you want to be up to date on what we're working on, always something new, always expanding, and always looking for volunteers, and there's plenty of opportunities to donate either time or funds or supplies. We went on a camping trip this year, and so now we're building up our camping supplies for our next camping trip. But like I mentioned before, funding is a serious issue now. You know, I say all the time, like, everything we do is kind of like DEI. So we actually, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but we were actually awarded a large grant that was then canceled by the federal government. So, you know, it's really a struggle. It's really a struggle, you know, because, of course, we picture ourselves being here forever, but it's, you know, we have to make that happen ourselves, basically. So, certainly staying in touch and understanding what we're up to. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, but certainly always accepting donations, or if you know of any funding opportunities that would be a good fit for us, you know, point us in that direction. And we have a community reentry garden at Open Doors on Plainfield Street. Of course, we're a little bit wrapping up the season at this point of the year, but normally you can find us there on Friday mornings at Open Doors on Plainfield Street in the summertime. And we do provide, you know, we have free fresh organic produce that we offer to the community on those days. So, but it's just a great vibe, and you can come pick berries and just enjoy the space and the folks there. So, plenty of ways to get involved. I don't know, did I miss anything, Mario?
No, I think you hit everything.
If you want a tree planted in front of your house, or if you know of an organization that needs landscaping, we started doing landscaping for other nonprofits in our area this year and everything. So we're getting creative so that we can sustain ourselves for many, many years to come. And yeah, go to our website, gardentime.us, if you want to find out more.
Amazing. All right, we are wrapping up. You are listening to 88.3 FM, WQRI, Roger Williams University Student Radio in Bristol, Rhode Island, and this is Hope Pod Live. We are wrapping up here with Emily Cotter and Mario Monteiro of Garden Time. We want to thank you both for your time and talking to us and everything you do. So thank you again for being here. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right.
This was fun.
We will be back next week with more news. We want to thank all of our partners and all of our amazing, amazing team who made this possible. And we will see you next week.